Welcome back, guys, to the Beyond Condition podcast, where I have a returning guest. Carly has come on to the pod, and we had really, really good feedback from the first pod we did together. And of course, you know, your job as a coach is to help people with mindset. And today we're going to be talking about investing in yourself. And that, on the face of it, I think a lot of people would go, okay, so that means putting money into yourself, but actually investing in yourself through what you do mentally and mindset wise is massive. I'm sure you'll agree, Carly.
Yeah, I mean, investing in yourself is emotionally, physically, and financially.
Mm.
So if we break it down and we think about emotionally investing in ourselves, this is the way we think, the way we feel, our behaviors.
Mm.
So over time, we want to grow and sustain a new kind of our emotional well-being.
Yeah.
And then physical, that's obviously where we're looking at our fitness goals and what we want to achieve physically.
Yeah.
And then financially, it's increasing obviously the value and assets over time. I think what a lot of people don't realize is all of the three are a cycle and they work hand in hand.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a prime example. One of my students, a client, she came to me initially. She wanted to build up her confidence. So we worked on her where she was emotionally and how she was feeling.
Yeah.
And then after time, we progressed to new behavior patterns, building up new habits, positive habits. So she started going out for a run
Yeah.
in the mornings. So then you've got the physical aspect, emotional, physical, and then financially, we worked on building up her confidence, and she's got her new job role as a sergeant in the police force.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a complete cycle of investing in yourself.
Mm.
It doesn't mean that you have to work on all of them and think about all of them at a time, but when things align, that's when everything falls into place.
Yeah, like you say, they all intertwine so easily, and sometimes, you know, it might be the other way around, where I get clients that come on for coaching and it's a physical goal, but then there's so much that's unleashed in the world of bodybuilding in regards to when you start investing in your physical appearance. All of these things happen, and I'm sure you'll agree, in a prep, every single prep, I get so much processing of thoughts, so many things come up, and I think I need to make a change in something in my life.
Yeah, and for me now, when I'm prepping for a show, it's because I want to challenge myself. I want to challenge myself emotionally. Physically, yes, but emotionally, it's more important for me to challenge myself and put myself under that positive pressure so I personally grow even more.
Yeah.
Because the more I grow as a person, the more equity that I build, financially, my business is going to be better as well.
Yeah, yeah. And you're relatable then as well, aren't you? Because like we've spoken about previously, you know, in the different phases of bodybuilding, people watch your journey and they see you grow, and that's more attractive to people. It gives you engagement, and you know,
Yeah.
people then relate and they almost look up to you. Like I look up to you, you know, you inspire me because of watching your journey, and like you say, you market yourself in a much better way by committing to different phases.
Yes, and I think, as you say, when people see that you personally do it as well, then you are more relatable to them in that aspect. So then what happens is you can build up your coaching business if it's like for yourself, with prep coaching people when it comes to their physical goals. They will then come to me for potentially their emotional goals and to start a business. So even though they see me physically just like you, we're working on different parts of our personal investment as well.
Yeah, for sure. And it is aspirational because, you know, it's how can you go to someone for coaching, as it were, if they're not investing in their self, if they don't really have a journey, it's not going to be as relatable. As you want to inspire people, of course, you don't want to be on a pedestal too much, because sometimes that can have the opposite effect. But if you can, you know, remain humble like us two, you know, we try and we stay on a level with people so that we can accept clients and they feel that equality there, and that's super
Yeah.
important as well, of course.
Yeah, for sure it is. And I think to be that leader doesn't mean not to be relatable. It just means that you know your part as an influential person,
Yeah.
and what you can personally offer and give to people, understanding of what you do and how people can either interpret what you say and absorb what you say. So I think as a as I say, as an influential person, I think it's very important, and probably going off on a tangent here as usual,
We do. We do.
it's very important to acknowledge what power you have, with your status, and how you presenting that, and how could people potentially interpret what you're saying or absorb what you're saying. Just being very wary of, because I have 15-year-olds following me.
Yes.
I have a lot of young ladies and possibly young boys that follow me, who are in their, they're in their growing phase, where everything they see and listen to, they absorb.
Yeah.
And I'm very aware of that. So there's certain topics, certain things that I personally wouldn't speak about, because I'm very aware of how you can influence someone in a good way, or in maybe not such a good way.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, digging into that a little bit would be really good, because particularly with social media, which is probably what we're sort of talking about here, there's so much you can see and intake, and podcast, things like this. You know what it's like when you listen to a podcast or you look on social media, you might see one very, very small snippet or hear one small thing, and that could stick with you. So you may be listening to an hour podcast and you take on one bit of information. And that's something I'm aware of with podcasting myself and my social media, very similar to you. I do second guess what I'm going to post, because someone could see that, read it, and then try and implement something that's not appropriate for them, or maybe not understand the full story behind it. It's very tricky, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'll give you an example from back in the day when I was, how old was I? Probably around, I would just kind of left school, so I think I was probably around about 17.
Yeah.
And it was at the stage that I'd never been into fitness when I was younger. And I always classified myself as the bubbly, fat girl. Because I was very, very different to all of my peers. I was very well developed, for
Yeah.
one, and no one else was. I was a lot louder, and I didn't fit in. And now, looking back, that's an absolutely amazing thing. I don't want to fit in, but at the time, I was very wary of physically what I looked like, and what I didn't, what I personally wanted to change, but I didn't know how to change. So back in the day, obviously, we have a lot of magazines, and I was reading an article in a magazine, and there were certain things that it said in there. It was about how a lady lost weight.
Okay.
And there was only one element of that her whole life transition, of how she lost weight dramatically and put a lot of her health under risks.
Yeah.
And how she's now transitioned and she's improved and she's out of that journey now. I didn't read all of the health implications. I didn't read any of that. The only segment I read was how she lost weight.
Yeah.
And it was very unhealthy. And then that's when I started my journey of having an eating disorder.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that eating disorder lasted 15 years.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that for a start.
15 years. And it came to a point that I had quite a few episodes that I fainted. And that's why when we speak about investing in ourselves, I wanted to invest in myself emotionally. When it came to having that eating disorder, I wanted to invest in myself and understand why. Why was I doing that? Yeah. Did it actually have anything to do with food? And in actual fact, it didn't have anything to do with food. The point was, I didn't like the person I was, and the thing that I could control was food. Yeah. And food actually was a source for me to beat myself up.
Yeah.
If I had emotionally, say, a bad day at work, and I didn't reflect on, what actually happened at work, then I would actually leave work I would go home on the bus. This is how old I was, obviously. I didn't drive. So I used to go home on the bus. I binged, and a binge isn't just a bar of chocolate. It's obviously a lot of food. And then I would purge and be sick.
Mm.
And that, as I say, that happened for like 15 years because I didn't understand the why. Why was I doing this? It had nothing to do with food, but what I could do is I could control food.
Yeah.
And that's how I dealt with my emotions, or should we say didn't deal with my emotions, of becoming a human being and becoming a soul that wanted to improve. So that's when emotionally I started working on myself.
How did it get to the point, sort of after those 15 years? Was there something that changed for you to get to that point where you were like, that's enough now, I need to change this?
I started working on my own personal development. It was a time that I actually stopped competing for a while.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any goal aspirations at the time. At the same time as that, I'd lost my job and I ended the relationship. Right. So as there was three major things that happened in my life at one point in time. So that's what the trigger was for me to step back and start understanding and start loving myself.
Yeah.
And people think, okay, so loving myself that's going to be some affirmations. I'm going to look in the mirror and I'm going to say, I love you. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah,
it really doesn't, because if you don't feel something, then words don't mean anything. So you just have to start understanding yourself. And actually working on yourself is hard, really hard, because you have to go deep.
Yeah.
You have to go deep. Like having a physical goal is actually easy because you look in the mirror, you know what you have to achieve. But to understand and think, why am I thinking like this? Why am I acting this way? What could have, in my past, what triggered this emotion to make me feel that way? It took about a year. Yeah. And then after that, that's when I'm a completely changed woman. Because now I understand the importance of working on yourself and your own self-care and investing in emotion, physical and financial.
Yeah. Because in essence, it's like childhood trauma, isn't it? Because you're seeing that Carly that was at school didn't feel in place, always looking to be like other people, and you weren't like other people. And that then harnesses 15 years is such a long period of time to build those habits of, binging, having an eating disorder. And, on the face of it, you were probably still that happy Carly, but inside you've got this trauma. And by purging, of course, that's almost letting it out, isn't it? And in essence, you're punishing yourself, aren't you?
It's actually punishing yourself. Yeah. You're punishing yourself. You're not doing it to lose weight. That's the funny thing. A lot of people think that you have an eating disorder because you want to lose weight. That wasn't the actual fact. It was a way that I could punish myself, and in a bizarre, strange way, it made me feel better because I didn't know how to control my emotions at the time.
Yeah.
So it's like letting that emotion out.
Yeah.
And now that's why I speak to all of my clients, the importance of communication. To communicate with people, like, how are you feeling today? It's okay, that you feel a certain way. Let's let that out, because we're all human beings, we're all souls, and we go through different days. One day you're going to feel a certain way, the next day you're going to feel a certain way, but that's not your identity. Yeah. Your emotion is going to continue to change depending on the circumstance and what you're going through that day.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, communication wise, relevant points there. And I had Rob Latty on the pod, and he was talking about, he gave an example of two ladies in a car, and they were dropping their kids at a youth club, and they saw loads of police cars, and the lady in the front thought in her head, okay, my child will be safe because the police are here. The lady in the back said out loud, oh God, something bad's happened. So you've got one person thinking, my child will be safe. The other person thinking, oh my God, what's happened? And it shows you the completely different thought processes two friends that may feel they're quite similar have. And of course, if you're not verbalizing how you feel to somebody else, you know what it's like. I've been in bad relationships before where inside I'm thinking, why do they not know I'm upset? But I haven't told them I am.
Yeah, and we all have different filters of the world. We all have different perspectives. So the way you're feeling about something, it depends how you're communicating, and that's what I work on with a lot of my clients. And I've worked on a lot of relationships before, where how are you communicating with your partner? What's the tone you're using? Are you standing up? Are you sitting down? Have you planned what you want to say? And is it a time that people aren't rushing around? Because if your other half has just got in, he's flustered anyway from work, it's not a good time to communicate something now. So it's actually finding that effective communication and understanding that people do interpret things a different way. So how are you going to express how you feel in a way that they will understand?
Yeah, of course. And in relationships in particular, we both know the power of resentment setting in. And if that starts and it continues, when you're then trying to communicate something, you're already coming across in the wrong way. So the person that you're having this conflict with, it's a conflict before it even begins. And it's very hard to then undo resentment if you haven't communicated from the start or, the initial stages.
Yeah, communication's so imperative with everything. And even with GluteWear, all of the ladies that work for GluteWear, I am so big on communication when it comes to that. And I'm always putting them under positive pressure. And I actually had a conversation with one of them yesterday. Actually, I don't like the word conversation when it comes to business.
Yeah,
I must say, because she said to me, I've sent an email and we were having a conversation. I said, look, it's not a conversation. With emails, you need to know your intention and what the outcome you want.
Oh God, emails.
Conversation. Yeah, email is what's the intention of the email and what's the outcome that you want from that email. Yeah. It's not a conversation. Anyway, so I always put them under positive pressure because I believe in them and I want them to personally grow. And I know that you can only grow if you're under positive pressure. And I have to explain to them, obviously, being the hierarchy, that I'm not doing it because I'm putting anyone down. I'm doing it because I want you to evolve.
Yeah, for sure. Investing in yourself as well, when you are on the journey of bodybuilding in particular, there's definitely lots of examples that I come across as a coach and as with, communicating with other bodybuilders of the external pressures that actually come from that. So that maybe we could talk about how you're investing in yourself and you're on a journey of, say, dieting or a prep, and then you face people that are negative about it saying, what are you doing that for? That's unhealthy. You shouldn't do that. And it's hard, isn't it, when people come across this, because we've been there. We can deal with it in a much better way, I'd say, because of the experiences so many times. But maybe coming right back to if someone is in a first time prep and they're in a workplace and they've got, friends around them and they're flooded with this negative type talk, how you combat that.
Okay, so I'll be honest with you. I'm probably one of the few. I've always had, not so much now I'm in wellness, but when I was more in women's physique and figure, I did have a lot of comments, and we classify them as haters or that kind of thing, and people saying, oh, why are you doing that? You don't want to turn into a man, and all comments like that. But for me, emotionally, it didn't affect me. Yeah. And the reason it's never ever affected me is because I truly believed in myself. I believed in what I personally wanted to achieve. And I think that's the important thing to take away. Throughout your life, you have to understand that there's always going to be people that don't like what you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're winning or losing. So just make sure that your goal is you're doing your goal for you and you truly believe in yourself. Because if you don't believe in yourself, the only time you want external validation is when it's positive.
Yeah.
You're not looking for external validation when it may be perceived as negative. So if you actually believe in yourself and you have full confidence in yourself, then you don't need external validation. It's nice. Yeah. I'm not saying it's not nice, because it is. We all like a nice comment, but at the same time, you don't need it.
Yeah, I love that. I was having a conversation with a client, Rob. He actually listens to the pod, and I was saying to him, it's like a cherry on top. So all the work you're doing, everything you're doing is for you. You're doing it for the right reasons. He calls it his incarnation of becoming the best version of him. And it's amazing to see him strive and progress. And now he's starting to get comments, you're looking really good. What are you doing? And I'm like, just see it as a really nice thing, like you say, but that's not the driver, because he has a really strong why. And this is gold for anyone on this journey. You've got to understand why you're doing it.
Yeah, you have to. And I would say, I mean, the reason you have to understand your why is because you're going to have a lot of shit times.
Yeah.
You're going to have a lot of challenges. There's going to be a lot of pressure. There's going to be a lot of stress. And this can be to do with bodybuilding, business, relationships. And to understand your why and your personal beliefs and values, because there's going to be a lot of times. And if you don't know the reason why you're doing it, or you forget, then that's when things can come a little bit misaligned.
Yeah.
And you could be looking and comparing yourself to other people to find your why again.
Yes.
But that your why isn't going to be in with anyone else. It's you sitting back and going within and saying, okay, why do I want to do this? Like, why? The real core reason why.
Yeah, for sure. It's cool you touched on that actually with social media. I found at the start of my journey, I'd be scrolling endlessly going, I want to look like that. I want to look like that. And I remember I spoke to my coach and I said, I want delts like this. I want glutes like this. And I'd like picked all these body parts from different athletes. And he said, okay, so for a start, none of them are you. It's a completely different genetic makeup. You don't know if they're assisted. Of course, in bodybuilding, it's very different. Lighting, Photoshop, the list goes on. So you're striving for something that's not possible because it's not you.
Yeah, you've got completely different genetic makeup. Your mechanics are going to be different to someone else. And I actually had a conversation with another wellness athlete the other day, funny enough. And we were talking about how, you know, people are speaking about this is how you train for wellness, or this is what you shouldn't do. But the simple fact is, there's no kind of right or wrong. It's what works for you. You may see me do an exercise, you may not feel it.
Yeah.
But that's because we are different. The way our body moves is different. You may be shorter, so you may feel the most out of a squat.
Yeah.
You know, for me, I love an RDL, but maybe for you, that's not a movement that helps you in any way, shape, or form. So it's good to look at people for inspiration and go, yeah, like they're looking wicked, you know, but think about yourself as your own target, your own goal, and the cliche you versus you and all that bollocks.
Yeah. It's true, but it is like fucking hell.
Yeah, but just get motivation, get inspired. But at the end of the day, just because someone's doing one workout or one business is growing a certain way doesn't mean you are, or your business is too. As I say, it's like, you know, people, there's so many people who have different podcasts or read different books. Everyone has different morning rituals because it's what works for them.
Yeah.
Some people might like getting up at 4 a.m, 5:30, 6:30. One will go for a run, one will meditate. It's whatever works for you.
Yeah, it's like social media. I always say to people, if you're scrolling through and there's someone that almost is a red flag in your mind, every time you see a post from them, it ignites some sort of ill feeling. Just unfollow them. You don't need to follow them, you know?
Yeah. Unfollow, mute, whatever you want to do, because at the end of the day, if someone's not serving you positively in your life, if they're not going to serve you and help you grow in any way, and that could be grow physically, mentally, become more happy, then, you know, there's certain people that you potentially may have to speak to, like your family, but maybe just don't speak to them as much or as often as you do currently. And what I mean by that is, maybe you don't have to speak to them every day. If you do, make it shorter. You know, there's certain things, or acknowledge how they make you feel, because we have to remember our parents were born in a different decade to us.
Yeah.
So things do change, time's changing rapidly. So don't absorb what they're saying if it's something that you personally don't believe in yourself. Because as you know, we can, if we're scrolling or if we're interacting with the wrong people that aren't going to serve us on a daily basis, we will be molded into that.
Yeah.
It's very important to recognize that, and that's where emotional investment comes in.
Yeah, for sure. With investing in yourself, you know, it, like we say, it's mentally as well, but it is things like reassessing your circle, reassessing the people around you. We spoke about it on the last pod, you know. Yes, you see people at expos and things, and like you said, it was so funny. You're like, yeah, you know, how have you been? It's been ages. And it's people that, you know, aren't really invested in a conversation with you. It's almost like on the face of it, and that's okay if you see it for what it is, but sometimes you can get so invested in the wrong people because you want them to be, you know, part of, maybe for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I like my own company.
Yeah, I do
massively. So I've always kept my circle relatively small, apart from school when I thought you had to be in the big crowd. I learned that didn't really help. I've always had a small circle, and I think the older I've got, the more important my time is, and who I spend my time and who absorbs my own energy, because our energy is everything. If people suck our energy, then we can't focus, we can't give, we can't offer anything, because we haven't actually got anything to offer ourselves, because the energy's gone.
Yeah. There's nothing worse than when you are in a relationship, whether that's as a friend or an actual, you know, partnership, when you're dreading having conversations, when you're not wanting to be in their company. It just zaps the life out of you, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've had that in the past where I've had people text me when I was probably slightly younger, and kind of say, "Oh, Carly, we have to meet up soon. I need some of your energy."
No.
And I'm like, no, you know, I would, if anyone texts me that saying now, I'd be like, my energy's my energy. You're not going to zap that, mate.
Yeah. You do find yourself in these scenarios, don't you? Like social groups, and you know that you're the only one that's going to bring everyone together, because everyone's just sitting there relying on you to be like the sort of cheerleader of the group.
That's why I don't have social groups.
Yeah. It's true though, isn't it?
Definitely. I as I say, definitely not. No one is zapping my energy when it comes to social groups.
You know what it's like if you go to an expo, you get home and you're literally like, God, I can't even function.
Because you have so much, you're giving off so much energy, and obviously you're not overly getting it back, because it's, you know, it's work, isn't it? So you are doing that, but then that's when you have to, you know, step back. You know, you know that your energy is going to be zapped, so have that time after to give yourself that self-care to then replenish.
Yeah, it's a bit like after, I know it's a bit more extreme, but after a prep, you know, after you've had a show, I always say to people, if you can, try and put after the show that evening, choose the people that you actually want to spend time with, maybe the people that have been there throughout your prep with you, and have like a sit down meal and just relax. Or me and Matt, after my last show, went and sat in the hotel room and had time together, because at a show you're like, it's manic, and then you're absolutely knackered. And then I always say the next day, if you can not set alarms, if you can not travel, some people you have to sometimes, but if you can allow some grace, I actually prefer it after the show, because before the show I'm so hyped, like I almost don't need that time off per se. It's after you get that dump of like, fucking hell, the show's done.
Yeah. I think a lot of people so hyped on the, you know, hustle, work, you know, and you're not superhuman. None of us are superhuman, and we have to understand that it's okay to go slow sometimes, because sometimes when you go slow and you're replenishing, that's when you're actually going to go faster after replenishing. So if that's with your training, or if that's with you educating yourself further, you're not going to be training as much because you're giving your body that rest. Why don't you give your mind a bit more stimulation in another way? If you have got a coach, you know, maybe there's something that you can personally work on together. If it's a physical goal, you know, look at what goal it could be, but then they could think about their goal, start reading up on, you know, maybe different styles of training. educating themselves behind the scenes of training, the health benefits of certain, supplements and health supplements that they can take, especially as a female. We have so many hormones. I am 42 and I'm actually perimenopausal. So I sometimes that I'm going to be sent away in a straitjacket.
Take me now.
So then for me, it's reading up on different health supplements that will help with the hormones, but at the same time giving myself a break emotionally to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't give themselves time to really understand, okay, why am I feeling this way post show? You're going to feel a certain way because you've had your prep 12, 16, 18 weeks. You've had that goal. You've gone to extreme.
Yeah.
Bodybuilding extreme. You've gone to that extreme and then you've gone halt.
Yeah.
And that's when your body goes into shock because you're not training like you used to. So you're potentially aching more. Emotionally, you've probably been quite emotionally numb and focused on one thing. So now emotionally, you're like, okay, so where are these emotions going to go now?
Holy shit.
That's where it all comes up. Financially, you're going to be better off though now because you're not paying for prep. Yep. So maybe invest in something else at the same time.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like the post-show dump that I call it, it's that no one ever really can combat that with you until every single show. It's different as well, I must add, but until you experience it, it's very hard to know how that's going to feel. And of course, like you touched on there, the goal is removed in a certain degree, but I find that it's our jobs as coaches that before the prep's over, you start laying down the foundations of how the post show is going to look and giving our clients the tools to, think about what's the next goal. Okay, so it's recovery. What does that look like? Where do we then head?
Yeah, and I've actually, one of my clients who I work with more on her mindset and her confidence, we've actually built a whole strategy for this year. We did that in December. She actually lives in Edinburgh and she flew to come and see me for a day. And basically she wants to do a show. I don't prep her for a show because that's not my role. She has a coach and I work on her personal growth. So what I did with her, we sat down and every, say, quarter, we worked out what she's going to do and what goal is. So the first quarter, she focused mentally, it's focusing on that goal. And then she has new training in her role. And there's a segment in there for that. And then so by the time of 24, no, we're in 23. By the end of 23, she's achieved all of these things and because mentally she can, because we have that structure and that strategy in place for the whole year.
Yeah. It's so important. Like, it's not just when you're bodybuilding, it's not just a phase of a prep. Actually, sometimes I find that people need more support in the recovery, into the reverse, into the off season, when you think, oh no, I'll be fine. But of course, as well, maybe we could touch on the physical adaptations after a prep and going into that recovery phase. But then of course you've also got, we spoke about food a little bit earlier with binge type behavior. That's something that comes up post show as well if you're not potentially armed for that.
I think it can come up as well to the people who potentially have some kind of trigger in there anyway emotionally. I think understanding your why again with why you're competing, because a lot of people will compete and they don't understand the why they're actually competing, or they're competing because they're running away from something. So and a lot of people I've been there before.
Me too.
When I had a bad relationship, I competed because I wanted to be emotionally numb.
Me too.
So, and then because then you get to the show's ended, you've got to deal with all that still. So again, it's understanding your why. Why are you doing this? Are you doing it for the right reasons? Or are you running away from something? Or are you trying to improve yourself in different aspects of your life? Because you can end a show and think, okay, so I've done this show. I've taken people on the journey. Now I've ended the show. I can push my business and it will excel. So it depends on the why, because it could be that after the show you look back and go, this is how I've grown. Like literally, I didn't realize I could do this. Now my self-belief in myself, my self-confidence, because I've walked on stage when I never thought I'd be able to do that, and I've achieved this. So reflecting after a show is, I think, is very, very important, because people have their own whys. You have to understand your why first of all.
Yeah, of course. And, you know, when you're entering an improvement phase, you spoke about on the last pod that you did like a 3 year between shows. And actually, you know, if your judge's feedback is that you need to grow, then it may not be that you're going to go back to stage that following year. But if you're unhappy and you're doing it for the wrong reasons, I competed every year for like, you know, nearly 10 years because I was trying to mask I was so unhappy.
Yes.
So you just keep prepping, and you're thinking, okay, so I haven't actually improved that much. And then I did a longer off season and it was like, oh, okay, so that's the point in an off season.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's amazing. But when you know your why, like this is the first year I've had out since starting as a bodybuilder, and I'm going to have like an 18-month off season. I don't know when I'll go back to stage because I'm leaving it fairly open. And this is really unknown territory, but I'm actually happy now. And I'm like, oh, okay, so you know, I can actually grow for longer and embrace that period of time.
Yeah, and that's the time that you can work on other aspects and utilize your energy in other ways. Because I did that for 5 years. I
Amazing.
didn't compete for 5 years. And people think, well, why didn't you compete? One, I just downsized and I trained for lifestyle,
Yeah.
but I wanted to spend my energy building my business. And what we have to understand when it comes to goals, your goals have to align with your priorities.
Yeah.
So my priority then was to build my business. It wasn't bodybuilding. So that wasn't a priority of mine. So it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I work on with a lot of my clients, because a lot of people don't achieve things because they're equal. If you did an ecological check on someone, their values don't actually align. Their priorities don't align with their goals.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's, have you got the time?
Mm.
Have you got the money? Have you got the energy? How much time are you willing to spend on this goal? How
Mm.
much energy are you willing to spend every day on this goal? Oh, okay, so I probably wouldn't be able to, spend that much time every day. Okay, so this is not for you right now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's amazing when I had this conversation with my other half, Matt, actually after our pod, and I said to Matt, I see you as, you know, one of the top 3 female athletes that I've ever followed in my bodybuilding journey. And I said to him, Carly had like 3 years away from stage, or, you know, you're saying 5. I wouldn't have joined the dots that you had that long away from stage, because like you say, you were working on your business, you were at shows, you were on social media, and I never would have thought that. But I thought, as a bodybuilder myself, you've got to compete every year to be in the spotlight, to have something to talk about, and it was all going through my mind. But actually, you didn't for that period of time while I was bodybuilding, and I still see you as one of those top 3.
The thing is, the more diverse you are, the more you have to offer in multiple different ways,
Yeah.
the more you're going to excel. And for business, or okay, let's to keep yourself present, you always have to change. And that's something that I've always done throughout my years. And that's why from 2008, when I stepped on stage, to 2023, I'm still relevant.
Yeah, you
And the
are.
simple fact, the only reason I'm relevant is because I continue to change
Yeah. Yeah.
and I mix it up.
Mm,
So people won't get bored, because as soon as someone gets bored, I will either change my look,
yeah.
I will change my business, I will change, I don't know, something to keep them interested.
I love that. Yeah, I think that in itself is very, very powerful, because we get scared of change. We hide behind things like we've spoken about today already.
I thrive on change. I get nervous if I'm not changing. I thrive on change. I have to have pressure. I have to have challenges. I have to have stress.
Yeah.
That is how I work. And my other half, he says to me, he says, "Oh, you're changing your hair again. What's wrong with it?" There's nothing wrong with it. I love change. Everything. If it's business, if it's physical, if it's my physical appearance, I love it.
I think as well, you know, it's something for people to note that actually stress can be a good thing. It's the level and how it affects you.
Yeah, and understanding stress, because the more that you have different challenges and pressure and stress that you can't personally control, you're going to have that a lot within business and everything. And what that does, it helps build up your mental resilience, helps with your agility, helps you make decisions faster if you know how. And the understanding of a challenge doesn't have to be a negative thing. A challenge is there for you to learn, to grow, to become greater, and to make mistakes. So then you know how to evolve even more.
Yeah. Oh, I
I've
love a
lost
challenge.
money with business. I've lost money with business. There's certain things that I've learned because of it. So I wouldn't bloody do that again. But guess what? Next time I'll probably lose even more, because that's part of life. Life is a game. So you're either playing a game or you're just existing.
Yeah.
I'm not born to exist, because you may as well be dead.
Yeah.
It's just live in the moment, live in, if you want to set yourself a goal, don't overthink, don't procrastinate, do it. Because the more you overthink about it, the more you're going to talk yourself out of it. And if you talk yourself out of it, then guess what? You're going to be watching someone else living your dream.
Yeah, for sure. And it's when you come across these haters that we touched on earlier, quite often than not, it's because they're not in control of their own shit that they want to take it out on you.
Yeah, and I think the more followers you have, or the more well known you have, the more you're going to get that. I mean, if you think about them, the celebrities, I mean, how do they deal with what they're going through? I mean, so you have to be emotionally detached when it comes to things like that. And just, one, don't be so hard on yourself. And you know what? Even though they're saying something, they don't really care much about you. So you stop caring about it.
Yeah. I had Emily, a friend of mine, on the pod, and we were talking about, it was based on sort of relationships with food and things like this. And she was saying, you see all the IFBB pros on Instagram, there's a lot of them that say, I don't go for a meal out and whatever. And she's like, yes, they do. They do have a life as well. Some of them maybe not, but most of them are going to do.
Yeah, as a professional athlete, what I've understood is a lot of amateur athletes, that is just me generalizing, not everyone, but generalizing now, think that professionals do not do these things, whereas professionals actually have more fun than amateurs.
Yeah.
I drink, I eat, I will go on holiday, I will have time off at the gym, not because it's planned. I don't have planned time off. I have a time off when I wake up and think, you know what, today's not the day, or I've had a heavy day at work, I'm going to rest today. So if you want to be a professional, act like a professional, but it doesn't mean do even more work. Sometimes it means more self-care, understanding yourself, giving yourself more rest, and loving the journey of it all, loving that process. Because in reality, you walk on stage, and let's say, for example, you don't get that medal. What is it the end of the world? No. But because you've only fixated on that, yes, it is. And two, if you walk on stage and then you haven't actually processed any of the journey, it actually means nothing. And if you're doing it for yourself, or you are doing it for business, people do not care what placement you get. They want to know how you felt along that journey. They want to know what you did day to day to get there. They're looking at your work ethic, and all different elements of that journey, of that process. So, stage is great. I don't like stage. I don't never liked stage. Oh, the only time I did like stage was 2008, when I had no expectations at all.
For sure.
But I don't like getting on stage. I don't do it for that. That's obviously, we have to do it, but I get backstage and I'm like, oh God, here we go. I have to, come on, Carly, bring that diva out of you,
And it's all the like tanning the night before, and you've got to sleep like this, and everyone sees you on stage and you're like this epitome of health, but what have I had to do to get there?
Yeah, exactly. Well, bodybuilding's an extreme, isn't it? It is an extreme sport. So
Yeah, it's when you spoke about on the last pod, you know, being at show day and that being that one day you've worked for, and you know, that lean physique that you strive for, and you don't have a problem with coming off stage and then embracing the next phase and coming away from that, because it is just for that one day. That really stuck with me personally, because I've definitely struggled in the past with pushing up in off season, because it scares me, you know, coming away from being lean. But that's like, it's in my head. Listen to what Carly said.
that's the difference. I don't do it to be lean.
Yeah.
I do it to put pressure and to challenge myself mentally. I want to challenge myself mentally. How can I run a couple of businesses? How can I compete? How can I, spend time with my partner? How can I physically, mentally, emotionally achieve all of this and get on stage?
Yeah.
That's why I do it. And then, I love, obviously off season in a way because you're stronger, but I don't like it because you're sluggish.
It's a
Apart from
weird
that,
one.
it's not for me. It's not a challenge, especially at my age. I'm 42. I'm a very strong woman.
Yeah.
Not just mentally, but physically as well. I'm very strong. So yeah. So in off season, it can. I have to ensure that I'm doing not lifting too heavy. For the simple fact is, I am getting older. I
Yeah.
have to think about this. I have to be realistic. So that's when sometimes I have to take a little step back. And Carly, you're not a power lifter anymore. You don't have to lift 4 plates aside on a deadlift anymore, Carly. People have seen it once; they don't need to see it again.
Calm down.
Check your ego. Yeah.
Love that. If anyone is listening, and you know, we touched on about, you know, delving into things like preps and what have you to, I guess, not maybe address things in your life that aren't right. If someone's listening and thinking, fucking hell, you know, I'm not in the right relationship, or I'm not in the right job, or things like this, what would you say would be the sort of first steps that they'd start to take if they've had this like light bulb moment by listening to us talking today?
I would say don't, always do something for the right reasons. You know, we can all run away, but if we run away, it's going to come back on us. So and that's where, investing in yourself, investing emotionally, like understanding yourself a lot more, giving yourself that respect to have that opportunity to really get to know yourself, because we can go through so many years, and I have in my 20s gone through so many years and early 30s that I didn't know who I was, and I wasn't happy.
Yeah.
I wasn't happy because I didn't know who I was, not because no one made me happy, but because I wasn't happy. No
Yeah. You
one
didn't
else
love
can make
yourself.
you, yeah, no one else can internally make you happy if you're not happy yourself. And to then think, okay, so why aren't I? Why aren't I? But what are the things that make me happy? And how can I do more of these things every single day?
Yeah. And I found that when I was in a bad spot, things like journaling, and you know, you don't necessarily have to talk to friends and what have you if you're not ready to do that, but writing your thoughts down, and like you say, actually working out what makes you happy. Because when you're bodybuilding, especially in a prep, you can be easily guilty of not doing anything outside of that. So my energy is from cardio, gym, work, food prep, all of those things. And then it's like, so what have I done today? I know we enjoy training and what have you, but what have I done outside of that that's maybe like a hobby?
What's
It's,
your hobbies?
well, I like drawing. I like
Do
puzzles.
you? Okay.
Yeah. I also go raving sometimes, like not much, but I love music.
Oh, do you see? I've never been a rave. I'll tell you a story, right? I think I was probably about 18. I was like, right, let's go to this rave like in London. Can't remember what it's called, right? Oh, the outfit of what? Obviously, I just didn't know what to wear. So I wore this little skirt, this fluffy top thing, right, and these high shoes.
Oh
My
God, not the high shoes.
Yes, my feet felt like they were bleeding.
Yeah.
So raving's not for me, mate. For one, I can't dance. I look like I'm having a fit. It's just not a good look for me at all.
I find that doing like the drawing and the puzzles and stuff, particularly in a prep, you know, obviously you do get to points where hunger is up there. And actually, I found doing stuff like that enables me to stop and focus on, you know, the task at hand, be present.
Yeah.
And actually, that helped with, like, we're talking about stress and what have you. Stress has a very, very negative effect on the body, but I don't think people realize that in a prep sometimes. You know,
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I mean, it's finding things that give you a little bit more peace at the same time. My thing is, I mean, I love the outdoors. I love driving to the sea. I just sit there and just the waves are so therapeutic. Or I go for a walk in the park or the woods, and I love trees.
yeah.
Right? Trees are the most beautiful things, and there's been moments in my life, and I'm going to sound like a crazy tree lady, but I've spoken to trees, okay?
Love it.
Yeah, and that's when all my clients now go, I don't want to work with you anymore.
Free hugger.
But like, to understand, we're very, very similar to trees.
Yeah.
Because a tree will go through all of these different seasons, right? They will shed their bark.
Yeah.
They will then blossom. But a tree isn't blossoming every time of year. They have to go through rain, storms. They have to go through all this to then blossom and become beautiful when people see them. People don't acknowledge them through the storm. They acknowledge them when they're out and they're glowing. You know, when people say to you, oh, you're really glowing. Yes, because you know what? I've just overcome a storm.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That's why trees can be really relatable if you actually focus on the growth of a tree throughout every season, through every decade.
Yeah, like a person. And there is it's very easy to become in this like fixed direction, fixed mindset where, you know, you're on this journey and you don't want to change path. But if the wind comes, you need to be able to adjust your sails and be able to go down a slightly different route. And actually, quite a lot of the time, the harder route is much more cathartic and enjoyable when you get to the next destination, you know?
Yeah, and you've learned a lot more. So it's just giving yourself that opportunity to pivot when needs be.
Yeah, there's so many examples. I'm sure you've got lots of examples when you've gone to, you know, near rock bottom or rock bottom. And at the time, it's like, fucking hell, you know, why is all of this happening? But then when the light comes, it starts to come through the clouds and you see that. And then all of those lessons you've learned, you know, I'm so grateful for all of those really hard periods in my life. I'm like, that taught me this, you know.
I think they're the critical moments that you have to do things for yourself. You have to give yourself that self-care. You have to push yourself.
Yeah.
And that's when you have to become more disciplined with yourself. Because I had a time, God, can't remember, it might be about 7-8 years ago. 7-8 years ago, the darkest time that I've ever been in. And I didn't want to wake up in the morning. I wanted to lie in bed. And I made myself get up. I didn't want to, but I knew that I had to, for me, not for anyone else. I had to do it for me. And that's when you go through times, acknowledge that you personally have to push yourself, because it doesn't matter if anyone's trying to push you. You have to do it for yourself. So it came to a point that I built up these new habits, and it took, these habits didn't make me feel great straight away. I pushed myself to do them every single day. And then after a month, I woke up, I sprung out of bed, I woke up feeling amazing. And I didn't acknowledge the why I felt amazing. But the simple fact is, I pushed myself every single day, not feeling any better until that moment came.
Yeah, because you do hit those points, don't you? Like you said, you're not going to wake up every day and think, oh, I'm full of rays of sunshine. You know, sometimes you're like, I don't want to talk to anyone. And it may not be, there's so many factors like you touched on earlier, you know, there's so many things that contribute to that. But sometimes you can accept that, okay, today I'm going to be a bit slower. I'm going to be a bit kinder to myself. I'm going to communicate with people around me that maybe I don't feel too good, but that's cool. You know, like that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
It's once you accept it, that you can have slower days and you can do things like yoga, meditation, go for a walk in the woods with the trees. It's really, really nice. But if you're like on the go all the time It
Yeah,
feels like those things are not productive when they are so productive.
100%. I'm a person who is completely on the go all the time. That's how I like to be. But then I have days that I do nothing
Yeah.
because that's what I get creative when I have free space in my head.
Yeah.
So if that is me just sitting on the couch,
Yeah.
literally just chilling. I don't like TV, so I don't really watch TV. But just being within my own head,
Mm, mm.
just to let it free.
I guess a good thing we could do before we wrap up is if someone's listening and maybe they're not sure if they do love themselves, or they're thinking, what does that mean? How would you start to sort of gravitate towards that way of thinking? Because I feel like I'm there with myself and you are, would there be certain things that you could do to try and embrace that a little bit more, loving yourself, being kind to yourself?
I think it's all personal kind of preference. It's not one thing, but I would say, build up a really good routine, build rituals that make you feel good. What actually makes you feel good?
Mm.
And then do more of that, but don't do it when you feel not so good. Do it all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And I
Good.
think because a lot of people only do things when they're like, oh, you know what, I'm having a bad day, I better go and meditate. So it's
Already
like,
in a dark place.
yeah, whatever serves you well, do more of that. I would say that's one thing, and I would say get a coach.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because don't think that you're superhuman and you have to do everything yourself. We all need that person in our circle to see a different perspective of life.
For
And that's what
sure.
I do with a lot of my clients. You have a different perspective because you're outside, they're in a bubble.
Yeah.
At the minute, they may have a distorted version of
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah.
So that's when you can work with someone and like bring a new perspective of life, and that's when they can kind of start understanding themselves, start working on their mindset and their wiring of their brain,
Yeah. Yeah.
and rewire it in a different way. And
Mm.
that's hard, but you know what, you sometimes you need help for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So good what you've just said there, because especially in physique development, we're our own, like, you look at photos and you're like, no, I'm not doing very well. And then your coach goes, okay, really good, looking good here. We need to work on
Mm,
here, da, 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 da. And then you're fueled up. Whereas if it was just
mm,
you on your own solo journey, whether that's mentally or physically, you can really be so detrimental to yourself as to if you're progressing. And a coach's
yeah,
job is to go, look what you've achieved this week. Look what we've got mapped out for next week. Let's get
yeah.
excited together.
And also, a coach is there for you to understand that not every week you're going to achieve something.
Legit.
And
Yeah.
that's an achievement in itself because what you've done, you've still been consistent, even though you're not going to see results.
Yeah. Yeah. It might be that you've done more things than you think you've done as well. So, like you say, consistency, if you've still done your steps, your food prep, and your water intake, this is
Yeah,
still wins. Like, this is more than a lot of people be doing.
the it's probably more than 95%.
I know.
You're one of the minority. So
Yeah.
keep going.
Yes, what a way to wrap up. I love podding with you. You are an absolute legend. And of course, you divulged a little bit about when you're going into prep this year. Are the listeners allowed an update?
Yeah, so it's June. It's Empro Classic, which is Alicante. I did that show last year. I love the Spain shows. Emilio, he puts on phenomenal shows. You feel like a movie star, and that's how you should feel when you compete. So I'm doing that. And then the Masters Olympia is in Romania. Never been to Romania, always wanted to go. So
Yeah, exciting times, and prep is already in your mind begun.
yeah, it has begun. We're actually working on a posing and confidence workshop, which will potentially be in Birmingham. That will be around roughly the 25th of March.
Okay.
We're actually going to be posting that out very soon. We're just clarifying everything before. But hey, you heard it first.
Oh, I love it. So we will watch this space then. And of course, thank you so much for your time. And if anyone wants to reach out or follow you, is the gram the best place?
Yeah, Carly Thornton official.
Yeah.
That's the main one, and then I've got all my kind of links to all different. I'm just organising a Facebook group. It's called the Power Group Community.
Awesome.
So for the simple fact is, just like podcasts, it's a way to speak a lot more, whereas Instagram, it's short reels, and you're not really going to get a lot of education from that. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to build up that at the same time.
Bloody hell, Carly, you are a busy bee, but remember, the trees are always there for a good old hug. Thank you so much.
I'd probably have probably get a hug from a bush more than I would a bloody tree, wouldn't I?
Next time you see Carly, she's going to be in a bush. You heard it here first. Thank you, lovely.
Thank you, babe.
See you later.
See you later.